Living in Virginia, you're in the fast lane on the information superhighway. We've invested $3 billion in Virginia's broadband network to give you one of the fastest internet connection speeds in the world, so you can build relationships, bring new business to our state, and meet the future of education. It's amazing what we can do together. Visit VCTA.com to learn how broadband connects the Commonwealth.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast, connecting Virginians to their government. We're very pleased to have members from Northern Virginia with us today. Senator George Barker, good to see you, sir.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Delegate Danica Roem, good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, we'll start with you because you are one of the newer members of the House of Delegates. Tell us a little bit about your campaign, how you got here, and what are your hopes for success this session?
Sure. So my campaign was really centered on those core quality of life issues that just affect basically everyone, like fixing Route 28 in my district, taking care of, Innovation Park so we can bring high dollar jobs into the same community that we live in, to, expand Medicaid to cover 3,700 uninsured people who live in the 13th district. And by the way, I'm one of them. Like, I know what it's like to, have to choose between your health care and a pound of medical debt, and it's not fun when you do. And I decided that, by making sure that we were talking about those everyday issues, and by really focusing on, what can I do as a delegate to be great with constituent service, and what can I do as a campaigner to make sure that we have the most aggressive field operation that we possibly could have, so we have the most conversations and the most quality conversations with our voters. That was kind of the MO for the campaign. And I learned from my Senator Barker, years ago when he came and knocked on my door. He's one of the only candidates for office to ever knock on my door in more than 30 years. And I learned from that, you know what? If I go and knock on a lot of doors that a lot of people usually leave alone because they're in the woods, they're too far away, they're not clustered together, guarantee you people are going to be, one, surprised, and second, I'm probably going to do pretty well with them. And in fact, we did.
Now tell us a little bit more about Innovation Park. That's in Manassas?
Yeah, so it's in the Prince William County portion of Manassas, so it's outside of the city of Manassas, and it's actually outside of the 13th district, but just by a little bit. And what's important with that is this is where we want to recruit high-tech, biotech, defense sort of jobs. And right now we have a lot of data centers that are over there, which is great. We have a lot of just basically everything from security to cybersecurity to, we even have the George Mason University Science Technology campuses over there with the world-renowned Wet Lab Center, which is great. At the same time, though, we have so many people who are commuting an hour to 2 hours each way to go to work along I-66 or going up 28 to get to 66 each day. And that's a product of not having enough high-paying jobs back home. We're in Prince William County right now. 2/3 of all the money collected in the county come from property taxes, and of that 2/3, 85% is paid for by the homeowners, and only 15% is paid for by commercial property tax. It's not because we don't have a high enough commercial property tax rate, it's because we don't have enough commercial property, in those high-tech, high-dollar jobs. And so, I really focused on the idea of finding a cost-effective way to extend the VRE, Virginia Railway Express, westward from the Broad Run station near the Manassas Airport out to Gainesville with a stop at Innovation Park along the way, so that we can make the area more economically competitive with Fairfax County because they have Metro and VRE. And I submitted a bill this year to get the ball rolling on that.
Great. Senator Barker, 2119 disadvantage, so to speak, for you that still exists in the state Senate. What are your hopes and dreams for this session?
I'm very optimistic. I think we can get a lot of things done, and I think certainly the change in the House of Delegates will help because it has changed the atmosphere here. I think people on both sides of the aisle realize we got to work together, we got to get along, and we need to move things forward for Virginia, and we need to occasionally have our disagreements, but to have not have them be disagreeable disagreements, and to move forward with things. I do think we have a very good chance of getting Medicaid expansion. That certainly is a high priority for me. My professional background is in healthcare, and I've seen the people who don't have health insurance and what it does to them. And in fact, spent a couple of years as director of the Community Health Center in Prince William. We have a lot of people who come there who don't have insurance. Almost, well, over 40% of the patients there don't have insurance. They pay something, but they don't pay anywhere near what the full cost of that is. And if it weren't for the services provided by the Community Health Center, a lot of those people would not get regular care. We need to deal with that and many of the other things. I'm also working very heavily on several transportation initiatives, particularly related to making sure that there's more transit within Prince William County, and also helping fix the metro system and getting the funding for that that's needed to get it back to a state of good repair and have it operating efficiently.
And of course, you've been a proponent of K through 12 funding.
Yes.
I assume that you're still going to be pursuing that as well?
Yes, and we do have, this is the year in which we do every 2 years we do the recalculation of funds, and that's fully funded there at the level it was previously. We have to, I think, do a couple of things that I think we'll be able to do over the next few years. One is to fully restore the cost of competing bonus that we get in Northern Virginia. Because it does cost a lot more. You have to pay the teachers, other personnel, significantly higher salaries than you do in the rest of the state, simply because of the cost of living, and particularly the cost of housing in Northern Virginia. So we are, but the formula itself doesn't account for that, so there is an add-on, but right now we're not getting the full add-on that the calculations have shown we deserve. So I think we need to restore that, if not this year, certainly hopefully in the very near future. One of the other things that I think is critical and is particularly important to Prince William is that we need to enhance the support and the number of children who are able to benefit from pre-kindergarten. We established a pre-kindergarten program, but it's optional for jurisdictions, and they can draw down as much money as they want to, but they do have to pay up to 50% of the cost, depending upon the cost of living, the index for the area, the local composite index. And in Prince William, we have very few children who are participating in that because the funding has not been provided at the local level to do that. I'm hopeful that we will be able to fix that over the next couple of years.
Now, in your wildest dreams, did you anticipate what happened in the House of Delegates in the recent election?
Well, I knew Dan and kind of a lot of the others were running hard races and had a good chance of winning, but that all of them, or nearly all of them, would win in 1 year was hard to fathom there. That it usually doesn't break, that everything sort of breaks one way, but this year it pretty much did. And picking up 15 seats and having another election decided by simply a draw of a canister, was very significant change in the House of Delegates, and it has fundamentally changed the dynamics down here in Richmond.
And of course, the election in the previous House Speaker's district was one that wound up in court. It wasn't successful, but I know you're going to be working on some changes regarding ensuring that precincts are drawn properly.
Yes. What happened in that case was there were actually two different precincts, one in Fredericksburg City and the other in Stafford County, where the registrars messed up, and they had a number of people in each of two precincts voting in the wrong race. Each of those two precincts had some of the individuals in one district and some in another district, and they didn't figure out correctly where the lines were drawn. What I've put in this year is legislation that would say after we do the redistricting, when the cities and counties and the local electoral boards redraw the precinct boundaries, they need to draw the precinct boundaries to fit with the district lines for the House of Delegates, for State Senate, for Congress, and for the county boards of supervisors and city council districts.
Delegate Roem, let's talk a little bit about what you anticipated when you got the call asking you to run, and why do you think it turned out the way it did so successfully?
So first, I received an email from our 2015 nominee, Don Shaw, telling me, hey, have you considered running? You'd be a really good candidate. I didn't respond to the email immediately, and actually never did. But the next day, I got a phone call from State Delegate Rip Sullivan. He's the recruiting chairman for the House Democratic Caucus, and he said basically the same thing. Hey, have you considered running? You'd be really good. So it didn't take a lot of persuasion. It was I knew I could put together a pretty good platform, and even on the call, I told him, I said, well, if I was going to do this, I would make fixing Route 28 my top issue, because it's gone unaddressed through Prince William County and Centerville for more than 30 years. It's been really bad. The last major change to that roadway was in the mid-1980s. And, north of there, I knew we had existing precedent in Loudoun County, all the way down to the Chantilly and even Centerville part of Fairfax County, for replacing traffic lights with overpasses. And at the same time, the 66 Route 28 interchange project is now officially underway. It started just after the election. And so what I want to say was we had existing precedent to get this done, to continue replacing traffic lights with overpasses. And in my portion of the 13th district in Yorkshire, it's not going to be necessarily applicable to actually have overpasses per se at each of these intersections. So what I did instead was I filed a resolution where I talked to a lot of our local transportation officials and came up with what's called alternative intersection designs. And the idea being that whether it's clover leaves, whether it's roundabouts, jug handles, even a flyover in the southbound left-hand turn lane at Orchard Bridge Drive to go basically over Route 28 in a miniature version of what you see at Waxpole Road right now, I figured that the more traffic lights that we can remove and the more creative engineering solutions we can have with it, number one, it's going to increase go and flow. That had to be absolutely, we need that. Stoplights stop traffic, so we have to replace the lights there. And the second part that we were doing, by making sure that we weren't just saying, okay, we're going to wipe out all of this area for eminent domain and blah, blah, you keep the cost down, but more importantly, you keep people in their homes. You're not taking their homes away from them. And by having a lot of different options on the table, what we're basically going to be able to do, if this resolution gets through the General Assembly, and I'm going to be working my heart out to make sure that it does, is we're going to be able to tell the residents around there, okay, we're doing our absolute best to save as much of your property, as much of your business, as much of the area that's there as possible, while making sure that we're giving you a safe and reliable way to get in and out of your communities, while all of the other throughfare traffic that we have coming in from Fauquier County every day, coming in from the city of Manassas, coming in from Nokesville every day, is able to keep going up the 28 corridor uninterrupted. Meanwhile, the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, they're looking at the capacity issue of Route 28. So mine looks at the go and flow, they're looking at capacity, and I think that what this election did was it reprioritized Route 28 as a major transportation issue in Northern Virginia, where I got a phone call from our Board of County Supervisors Chairman Corey Stewart afterward telling me that transportation would be one of the county's top priorities, and fixing Route 28 and taking care of I-95 would be the two top transportation priorities. Elections have consequences, and Route 28's new prominence in Prince William County is a direct relationship to the election that we just had.
George, let's talk about some of the transportation needs in your district and also statewide, because I know you've been involved in transportation for a number of years.
Sure. We passed a major transportation bill in 2013. It was the first major transportation bill really we've done in 26 years. It has made a huge difference. We've gotten funding for a lot of additional projects statewide, but particularly in places like Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads, where we have not only the state funding, but we also have regional funding that's set up now to be able to fund things. What I'm trying to, among the things I'm trying to deal with this year is dealing with the funding for transit that's in Prince William County through the Omni system that's set up to serve Prince William, Manassas, and Manassas Park, and provides a lot of buses. We also have funding for VRE that comes from that, and ridership on VRE has been steadily increasing. So we're very pleased to see that. It's something that people like, and it really works very well. And then the most critical issue that I'm dealing with this year is funding for a metro system. Metro doesn't come down to Prince William, at least not yet. We hope it will get there someday, but there are some plans to do that. It's built into the regional metropolitan area plan to come down into Prince William at some point. And after the Silver Line is finished out into Loudoun, I think we're next to be able to get that down. But there have been some significant problems with Metro in recent years. Part of that has been a lack of funding for capital projects, and so you have older cars, in fact some of the cars 40 years old, that are still operating on the system, and we're actually just in the last 6 months been replacing the last of those. But what we have to do is really make sure that the system functions properly. This is a system that 10 or 12 years ago, over 90% of the operating costs were recovered from fares. And so there was very little public subsidy that had to be done on the operating side. Now there is public subsidy on the capital side, but not that much on the operating side. But because of all the problems, it's led to a decrease in ridership because people haven't found it reliable, and that has resulted in less than 70% of the cost being recovered from fares. We can turn that around, and I think the new general manager is doing an excellent job of addressing a lot of the issues and problems. I've been working with, I'm on the board for the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, the only Virginia legislator on that board, and I've been working with my colleagues in Maryland and DC, and we've reached agreement in terms of how we individually move forward in a way that provides up to $500 million a year in additional capital funding so that we can fix the problems and the system can operate efficiently. That will bring ridership back up, make the system the envy of transit systems all across the country.
Do each state or District of Columbia legislative body have to approve that agreement?
Each of them will have to come up with our own method of funding. There have been a couple of people proposing a sort of a regional type of thing, but that would be very difficult to do. We are a very unusual transit system. Every other major transit system, rail system in the entire country is either all within one state or it's nearly all within one state. You have, for example, in St. Louis, you have about 90% of it in Missouri, but about 10% comes over in Illinois. What happens in those situations is the state it's in or the states that's dominant really sets the tone on it, and that's how things get done. In the DC area, we're about equal among Maryland, DC, and Virginia. And so we actually have more track miles in Virginia than they do in either Maryland or DC. We have fewer riders right now, but that has grown some, and particularly with the Silver Line coming out to Dulles and into Loudoun County, that is picking up and will continue to grow. So it's pretty much 3 equal parts there. And so we all have to work together to get it done, and there is no entity that is sort of calling all the shots. It does make it difficult, but what we have agreed to, and the Washington Post reporter on this has noted that he's not aware that the 3 states have ever worked together on the funding proposal like this before. So it's been very encouraging to do that. I've been very impressed with my colleagues in DC and Maryland. They are committed to making this work, and all of us have pledged to make sure that we get our funding put in this year's budget.
So have you been satisfied with your committee assignments?
So I had requested county, cities, and towns, and I was very happy to have to land the spot on that. And the reason for that is, I was the lead reporter of the Gainesville Times, covering my lifelong home of Prince William County for more than 9 years, from 2006 to 2015. And I authored more than 2,500 news stories during that time and interviewed Senator Barker many, many times along the way. I covered his first campaign in 2007 and his re-elections in 2011, 2015. So at the same time, so basically because of my journalism experience, I know that when on issues with towns, cities, and council, and counties, that's what I've been dealing with as a reporter for most of my career. This is what I know, and so I thought that I have a very thorough understanding of our proffer system. I have a very thorough understanding of even just the really boring stuff, like the difference between cast iron water pipes and ductile iron pipes, and like all those little things that you need to have within your locality. At the same time, I was hoping to get on the transportation committee, and I think that as my seniority grows, I'll certainly be able to get up there eventually. But in the meantime, by landing a spot on the Science and Technology Committee, I'm hoping that I can really talk up the Wet Lab Center over at George Mason, Innovation Park, for example, and even the Virginia STAR program that we have, where just very recently I was watching these high school students over at Battlefield over in Haymarket come into Manassas, into the 13th precinct over at Sinclair Elementary School, and they had refurbished and basically redesigned these laptop computers that they were giving out for free to students who were in need of them. And I think that when you have people on one side of Prince William County helping out some folks on the other side who maybe don't have as many advantages as they do, you're encouraging these kids to immediately give back into the community in a way that's allowing them to learn also, though, because they're acquiring skill sets about completely redoing a laptop and then giving it to someone who doesn't have the means to be able to afford that. And those laptops that we saw, those were old FEMA laptops that they just didn't need anymore, so they donated out to Battlefield. Battlefield fixed them up, and then gave them to the kids at Sinclair. That's wonderful, and I would love to continue promoting the Virginia STAR program, which helped make that possible in the first place, and promoting that within the Science and Technology Committee. Only one bill's been referred there so far. My next door neighbor in terms of districts, Delegate Lee Carter in the 50th district, he has one bill that's going into science and technology right now, but we'll see what's to come. And just to piggyback on one thing that Senator Barker was talking about regarding transportation funding, I am absolutely an advocate for making sure that we have dedicated funding for Metro because it's been long overdue. At the same time, the Prince William delegation, we're very much going to be looking out for the funding within the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority to make sure that our road funding is not going to be jeopardized in order to take care of this. Until Prince William County has Metro, the only way for our residents to get there is to use the roads in order to get there, right? Or you can take the VRE to Alexandria or Crystal City, which I used to do actually, and then I would hop on the Blue Line and then go over to Foggy Bottom from there, when I was working with the National Journal. But the reality is, this is a help me help you situation. It's like, if you would like Prince William County, Manassas Park, and the city of Manassas to help pay for the solution for Metro, then you need to make sure that the state is paying for our roads so that we can get there. We don't want $85 million of our road funding coming out from the NVTA going into Metro. Instead, we think that that should be a state share, for example. Now, the budget process, we still have a long way to go, and everyone's working amicably about it right now. And I think within the Northern Virginia delegation, we have mutual understanding. And I even talked to the governor last night, and even he, Governor Northam, he's acknowledged that we need to get to work on a common ground solution on this. He understands the issues with it.
I wanted to ask you another question. It
Sure.
relates to this ridiculous concept of alternative facts. And I know as a reporter you've dealt with that. It's taken hold in some quarters. But how do we get back to what the real facts are?
So during the campaign, and I've continued this in Richmond, I would tell people I deal with vetted facts, not alternative facts. In the newsroom, we call alternative facts something else I can't repeat on television. But instead, I think by relying on vetted facts, the way that I've conducted myself in office and the way I've conducted myself on the campaign is by making myself accessible, especially to reporters, because I am a reporter. This is my background. This is what I've spent 10 and a half years professionally doing. And I said I will always be a reporter before I'm a politician. And I come into Richmond, with as trying to promote as much transparency as absolutely possible. This is why I've put in a bill that to protect credentialed news reporters from facing lawsuits for not revealing the names of confidential sources, for example.
A shield law.
A shield law, and this is something that many other states across the country have. Virginia's lacked on this, and this is a bipartisan issue. When now Congresswoman Barbara Comstock was in the House of Delegates, she actually had put in a shield law, some years ago. It didn't get out of committee, but I think being a reporter and having retooled it, I think I've got a very good chance of promoting that. I've put in bills dealing with Freedom of Information Act, so that one of them that I've put in would create an ombudsman at the state level within the Attorney General's office, modeled off of what Maryland has right now. And that person's job will be to help expedite FOIA requests, to help agencies handle the FOIA requests that come in at the state level, while at the same time letting the consumers know that, yeah, we've got some actual teeth within our FOIA law. And another one that I'm going to be putting in is going to be proposing to put a cap on FOIA fees so that localities and the state government can't just use ridiculous amounts of, can't use ridiculous charges, for example, to deter people from getting their information. We have to remember, public documents were paid for by the taxpayers. We are simply recovering our documents at that point. And this isn't just about journalists. This is about the citizens. It's about the people being able to do this. Of course, if you have people who are just being obnoxious about it and just filing frivolous FOIA requests for no particular reason, of course you're not going to be too accommodating there. And if a lawyer has to redact certain stuff, I understand the idea of having the legal fee associated with that. But the fact of the matter is, we've got to be promoting a system where the most number of people have the most access to the most amount of information. That's what I'm bringing here to Richmond. I'm really focused on government accountability and transparency. And I said during the campaign I would bring a reporter's eye to Richmond, and well, I have.
George, is the Commonwealth going to be able to recover the monies that its citizens has sent to Washington for the past 8 or so years in terms of Medicaid expansion?
Well, we certainly won't be able to get those back, but I think we do have the opportunity to get them coming back in the future. So I think that is one of the advantages. My background, I have an undergraduate degree in economics and public health. If you look at Medicaid expansion from an economic standpoint, it's a no-brainer. It's good for Virginia businesses, it's good for the citizens of Virginia, it's good for the Commonwealth of Virginia in terms of our tax dollars and those types of things. It actually would save a lot of money. So state tax dollars that are now going to provide some services that could be picked up under Medicaid expansion would be available for other types of programs and services. So it would be tremendous benefit there. It's also a phenomenal thing for individuals who don't have health care coverage right now. The life expectancy of people who don't have health insurance coverage is almost 10 years less than it is for people who do have health insurance coverage. We shouldn't be, in effect, sentencing a lot of people in Prince William and Manassas Park to shorter lives simply because they don't have health insurance. And these are people who are working. These are people who, they don't qualify because they make it too much for the very low level of Medicaid coverage we have right now, but they don't make enough to be able to participate in the Affordable Care Act's health insurance exchanges. So that gap in there, which is toward the very low end of the income scale, but people who are working, that's who we need to be able to help here. And it would make a tremendous difference to the people and to the economy of Virginia.
Now, how does the expansion of Medicaid impact the opioid crisis that the nation and the Commonwealth are suffering from?
Well, it would be extraordinarily helpful there as well, because a lot of the people who fall into this gap are the ones who do have a history of opioid abuse. And to some extent, it's a little bit of sort of chicken or the egg as to which came first. For some of them, it was a situation where the economic opportunity in their area was not great, and so they ended up getting addicted, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, to the opioids. For other people, it was the illnesses and the problems and the conditions that they had that made it difficult for them to be able to work full time and make a have a better income. That is also a factor there. I think one of the things that has happened here is that with the opioid crisis, people all across the country and all across Virginia are understanding that for a lot of these people, it's not something they intentionally set out to do. They didn't set out to be able to try some drugs and get addicted to it. For many of them, it was as a result of a surgery or other type of thing where they were prescribed this, and then once they took that prescription, they got hooked on it. Right now, we do have a limited Medicaid program, a new program that just started a little over a year ago, that does provide some coverage and services for some people, but just for the substance abuse services. We're having to pay 50% of the cost of that because whereas if we had Medicaid expansion, we would pay only 10% of the cost, and the federal government would picking up the other 40% there. So we can benefit tremendously from a fiscal standpoint, which would allow us to provide the treatment, the medication-assisted treatment and other types of things to the people who have opioid abuse problems. And we could serve a lot more people and help get people to the point where they can live independently without being addicted to drugs again.
Thank you for being here, Senator George Barker, Delegate Danica Roem. Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans. Mm-hmm.